You wake up one morning and everything seems to go wrong. You miss your alarm, you're late for work, your boss is furious, and on top of that, your car breaks down. It feels like the universe is conspiring against you. But what if, instead of stressing out, you could remain completely calm and in control? What if these events didn't affect you at all? Today, we're going to explore an ancient philosophy that promises exactly that: Stoicism. It's a way of living that says, no matter what happens, you can always choose how you respond. But the big question is, can Stoicism really reflect reality, or is it just an unattainable ideal? Let's find out. Is Stoicism reality? Part 1. The origins of Stoicism, where it all began. To understand whether Stoicism truly mirrors reality, we need to start at the beginning. Stoicism, as a philosophy, dates back over 2,300 years to ancient Greece. It was founded by Zeno of Citium, a man who faced his own series of misfortunes. Imagine this: Zeno was once a wealthy merchant, but in a twist of fate, a shipwreck destroyed his fortune. Rather than being crushed by despair, Zeno found inspiration in the works of philosophers and eventually developed Stoicism, a way to remain unshaken in the face of life's trials. Stoicism gained popularity and evolved, with Roman philosophers like Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius refining the ideas. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor known for his meditations, embodied Stoic principles during his reign. For him, Stoicism was not just a philosophical exercise, it was a survival tool. As an emperor, facing wars, plagues, and personal loss, he used Stoicism to maintain clarity and composure. But here's the question: is Stoicism a philosophy for emperors and elites, or can it work for the rest of us in today's fast-paced world? Part 2. Stoicism's core teachings. Stoicism teaches us that there are two things we must understand about life. 1. There are things within our control. 2. There are things beyond our control. Sounds simple, right? But this is where Stoicism challenges the very way we think about life. You see, the Stoics believe that much of our suffering comes from trying to control things that we have no power over. The weather, the actions of others, even our own bodies getting sick. These things are largely beyond our control. What we can control, however, is how we respond to them. This idea of focusing only on what's within our control is what the Stoics call the dichotomy of control. Imagine you're driving in a rainstorm. You can't stop the rain, you can't change the wet roads, but you can control how carefully you drive. That's Stoicism in action. But here's the twist. Can we really control our reactions in every situation? In reality, when faced with loss, betrayal, or failure, our emotions often take over. Stoicism asks us to master those emotions, to focus on rationality. But how easy is that in practice? Can Stoicism truly reflect the emotional complexity of being human? Part 3. The Stoic view of reality, logos, and the rational universe. To the Stoics, the universe wasn't chaotic or random. They believed in something called logos, the idea that the universe is rational and ordered. Everything happens for a reason, according to nature's plan. This might sound comforting, but it raises an important question. Does the universe really have a rational order? Modern science paints a different picture. We live in a universe governed by randomness and chaos. Quantum mechanics, for example, shows us that at the smallest level, particles don't behave in ways we can predict. In other words, the universe isn't as orderly as the Stoics believed. But even if the universe isn't rational, does that mean Stoicism is irrelevant? Maybe not. Even in a chaotic world, Stoicism can still help us find order within ourselves. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." So, is Stoicism wrong about the universe being rational? Or is it onto something deeper? Maybe it's not about the universe being orderly, but about how we can create order in our own minds despite the chaos. Part 4. Applying Stoicism in modern life. is it realistic? Let's bring this ancient philosophy into today's world. Stoicism teaches us to remain indifferent to things outside of our control, but how realistic is that? In today's society, we're bombarded with pressures: social media, work, relationships, constant notifications. Life moves at a speed that the ancient Stoics could never have imagined. Is it even possible to stay detached in the face of modern stress? Let's take an example. Imagine you're at work, and your boss criticizes your performance in front of your coworkers. Your heart starts racing, your face turns red, and you can feel anger boiling up. In this moment, Stoicism would tell you to pause, take a breath, and remind yourself that your boss's actions are beyond your control. You only control your response. You choose whether to react with anger or with calm. But is that what happens in reality? For most of us, emotions take over. We feel attacked, embarrassed, and angry. It's natural to react emotionally. So, is Stoicism asking too much of us? Can we really be expected to control our emotions so perfectly? Here's the thing. Stoicism doesn't say we should never feel emotions. It teaches that we should acknowledge them, but not be ruled by them. That's an important distinction. Imagine emotions like waves. Stoicism isn't about stopping the waves. It's about learning how to surf. You still feel the pull, but you don't get swept away. Part 5. The Stoic practice of acceptance. Amor fati. Now let's talk about one of the most profound Stoic concepts, amor fati. It means love of fate. The Stoics believed that we shouldn't just tolerate what happens to us, but we should actually embrace it. Everything that happens, good or bad, is part of the natural order, and our task is to accept it fully. Sounds radical, right? But think about it. We spend so much energy resisting what is. We get frustrated when things don't go our way, angry when we face setbacks, and disappointed when life doesn't meet our expectations. But what if, instead of fighting against reality, we embraced it? Friedrich Nietzsche, the famous philosopher, took inspiration from Stoicism and developed his own version of amor fati. He believed that loving your fate, whatever it is the highest expression of strength. Instead of wishing for things to be different, you say, "This is exactly how it should be." But can we really live like this? Can we truly embrace failure, loss, and pain as part of life's plan? Or is that just too idealistic? I'll be honest, Stoicism isn't easy. It asks a lot of us. It asks us to look at the hardest parts of life, loss, death, disappointment, and say, this too is good. But here's the thing. Stoicism doesn't mean you'll never feel pain or sadness. It means you'll be able to face that pain with strength. You won't crumble under its weight. So is this practical? Can we actually train ourselves to love everything that happens? Or is this just philosophy's version of a motivational poster? Part 6. Real-life applications of Stoicism. Success stories and failures. Let's talk about people who have successfully applied Stoicism in real life. You might be surprised to know that many of today's thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and athletes use Stoic principles to navigate their challenges. Tim Ferriss, a well-known entrepreneur and author, openly credits Stoicism for helping him manage anxiety and stress. He often refers to Stoicism as his operating system for life. Ryan Holiday, another modern Stoic, has written extensively about how Stoicism can guide us through difficult situations, from business setbacks to personal loss. But for every success story, there are also people who find Stoicism too difficult to practice consistently. Some critics argue that Stoicism can be too rigid. After all, life isn't always so black and white. Should we always accept things as they are, or is there room to fight back, to strive for change? Stoicism teaches us to accept the present moment, but that doesn't mean we should become passive. Marcus Aurelius himself was a warrior and an emperor. He accepted reality, but also worked tirelessly to improve it. So maybe Stoicism is about finding the balance between acceptance and action. Let's move on from theory to practice, because philosophy is great, but only if it works in the real world. So how does someone actually live like a Stoic? How can we apply these ancient ideas to our everyday chaotic lives? One key practice the Stoics recommended is called negative visualization. Now, this might sound strange at first. Who would want to imagine bad things happening? But hear me out. The Stoics believed that by mentally preparing for worst-case scenarios, you could build resilience. They encouraged people to regularly contemplate losing things they hold dear: their job, their home, their loved ones. Not because they were pessimistic or morbid, but because they believed that being prepared for loss made you appreciate what you have and made you stronger when adversity inevitably strikes. Marcus Aurelius used this technique often. Before he went into battle, he would reflect on the possibility of defeat, capture, or even death. But here's the thing. This didn't make him anxious. It made him calmer. It grounded him in the present moment and reminded him of the only thing he could truly control: his actions. But here's the question. Can imagining bad things really make us stronger, or does it just create unnecessary worry? Can Stoicism help us embrace reality, even when reality is harsh and unpredictable? Now, imagine trying this technique today. Picture yourself at your job, getting ready for a big presentation. You could think, what if everything goes wrong? What if I forget what to say? What if the technology fails? But instead of letting these thoughts paralyze you with fear, Stoicism teaches us to accept them as possibilities and move forward anyway. You've prepared for the worst, so now you can focus on doing your best. This is not just about preparing for external events. The Stoics also teach us to face internal struggles, the things we often don't like to admit to ourselves. Our fear of failure, our need for approval, our constant craving for more. These are realities of human life that Stoicism invites us to confront head-on. In fact, one of the most powerful ideas in Stoicism is that much of what we desire is rooted in illusion. We chase after wealth, fame, or status, thinking these things will bring us happiness. But the Stoics ask, what if that's not true? What if real happiness comes from letting go of these external desires and finding contentment within yourself? What if the reality is that true peace can only be found when you stop chasing after things you can't control? This brings us to a crucial Stoic principle: apatheia. Now, when you hear that word, it might sound like apathy, or not caring about anything. But that's not what the Stoics meant. Apatheia refers to a state of being where you are free from destructive emotions. It's not about feeling nothing. It's about not being ruled by negative emotions like anger, fear, or jealousy. Imagine that. Going through your life without being dragged down by the storm of emotions that most of us experience every day. Someone cuts you off in traffic, and instead of fuming for the next hour, you let it go instantly. You face a tough situation at work, but you don't spiral into stress. That's the Stoic ideal: apatheia. It's about being so grounded in yourself that the external world can't shake you. But can we really achieve that? Can we realistically live without letting emotions influence us? Stoicism might tell us it's possible, but our reality often tells us a different story. Think about it. The emotions that shape our everyday experiences, they're deeply ingrained in who we are as humans. Anger, sadness, joy, excitement. These aren't just fleeting states of mind. They color our lives, give depth to our relationships, and in some ways, define what it means to be human. So when the Stoics tell us to strive for apatheia, are they asking us to give up part of what makes us, well, us? Let's take another example. Imagine losing someone close to you, a family member, a partner, a friend. The Stoics would say that while grief is a natural response, we must still strive to maintain our inner peace. We should remember that death is a natural part of life, and it's something we must accept. But how do you accept the loss of someone you love? How do you find peace in the face of such a painful reality? Stoicism says it's possible, but can we truly achieve that level of detachment in moments of deep loss? I want to pause here and reflect on something critical. It's easy to think of Stoicism as a philosophy that encourages us to be unemotional, to suppress our feelings, and just deal with it. But that's a misconception. Stoicism doesn't ask us to be emotionless robots. Instead, it asks us to be masters of our emotions, to feel deeply, but not to let those feelings dictate our actions or cloud our judgment. Take Epictetus, for example. He was born a slave, lived much of his life in hardship, and yet he became one of the most famous Stoic philosophers. His message was clear. It's not the events themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about those events. In other words, it's not what happens to you that causes suffering. It's how you interpret and respond to what happens. This is a radical shift in thinking, and it's where Stoicism challenges our everyday experience of reality. Can we truly change our interpretation of events so much that even the worst circumstances don't affect us? Can we really achieve that level of emotional control? Let's test this in a modern context. Picture this. You lose your job unexpectedly. It's a devastating blow, not just financially, but to your sense of identity and self-worth. Most people would react with fear, anger, or panic, but a Stoic response would be different. First, you'd acknowledge that losing the job is outside of your control. What's done is done. Then, you'd focus on what you can control, how you respond. Instead of spiraling into negativity, you'd see this as an opportunity for growth. Maybe this job loss opens the door to something better. Maybe it's a chance to pivot your career, to learn new skills, or to pursue something you're truly passionate about. This is the Stoic mindset in action. It doesn't mean you won't feel disappointed or stressed. It just means you won't be ruled by those feelings. You'll use them as fuel to move forward. But here's the question again. Is this really possible? Can we truly shift our minds to such an extent that even something as life-altering as losing a job becomes just another event, something to accept and move on from? Another core Stoic practice is the concept of memento mori. This Latin phrase means, remember you must die. The Stoics encouraged people to regularly contemplate their own mortality, not to be morbid, but to remind themselves that life is short and fragile. Think about that for a second. Remember, you must die. In our modern world, death is often a taboo subject. We don't like to think about it, let alone talk about it. But the Stoics believed that by reflecting on death, we could live more fully. If you truly understand that life is fleeting, you won't waste time on things that don't matter. You won't hold on to grudges. You won't be obsessed with material success, and you'll appreciate the present moment. But can regularly contemplating death really improve our lives? Or does it just lead to anxiety and fear? Let's think about how this applies to our daily lives. How often do we spend our time worrying about trivial things? What others think of us, our careers, the pursuit of status or wealth? The Stoics would say that much of this is pointless, because in the end, none of it lasts. We're all going to die, and none of these external achievements will matter in the grand scheme of things. This might sound depressing, but the Stoics saw it differently. They believed that by keeping death in mind, we would free ourselves from the fear of it. We would stop being distracted by the trivial and start focusing on what truly matters: virtue, character, and living in accordance with nature. In this way, memento mori isn't a grim reminder, but a call to live authentically and with purpose. And this is where Stoicism pushes us to confront the ultimate reality, our own mortality. It asks us to face the fact that everything we love, everything we build, will one day be gone. But instead of letting that fact paralyze us with fear, it challenges us to live better, to focus on what we can control, how we spend our time, how we treat others, and how we approach each day with intention. But here's the lingering question. Is this view of death realistic? Can we truly embrace death as a natural part of life and live without fear? Or is the Stoic approach too detached, too cold, to really capture the emotional reality of human existence. So far, we've talked about some of Stoicism's most famous practices: accepting what we can't control, mastering our emotions, and even contemplating death. But now, let's take a deeper dive. Stoicism is not just about handling life's major setbacks or accepting death. It's also about how we navigate the daily grind of being human. Consider the idea of virtue. For the Stoics, virtue wasn't just a moral guideline, it was the only good. They believed that living in harmony with nature and following reason were the keys to a virtuous life. Virtue, for them, is the highest aim. But the question remains, does this idea of virtue still hold up in our modern reality? Today, when we think of success, we often think of external markers: money, status, fame. But the Stoics believed that none of these things matter if you're not living a virtuous life. In their view, a person who lives in accordance with virtue is successful, no matter their circumstances. In other words, being a good person is the ultimate achievement. Everything else is just noise. Let's take a moment to think about what this means in our world. Modern society tells us to chase external success. We're bombarded with images of wealth and power, told that happiness lies in achieving more, buying more, becoming more. But is this really the path to a meaningful life? Stoicism would argue that it's not. In fact, Stoics would say that our constant pursuit of external validation is exactly what leads to unhappiness. Epictetus famously said, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." This is a powerful reminder that we must be humble in our pursuit of wisdom and virtue. But here's the challenge. How do we cultivate virtue in a world that rewards material success over moral integrity? How do we live according to Stoic principles in a reality that often seems at odds with them? One key Stoic practice that can help us with this is called the inner citadel. The idea is that inside each of us is a fortress, a place of inner strength that can't be shaken by external events. This inner citadel is built on virtue. It's where we retreat to when life gets tough, where we can find peace no matter what's happening around us. But how do we build this inner citadel? It starts with self-discipline. The Stoics believed that the key to a virtuous life was controlling your desires, mastering your impulses, and living in accordance with reason. This sounds great in theory, but let's be honest. How easy is it to control our desires in a world full of distractions? We're constantly pulled in different directions by advertisements, social media, and the pressures of modern life. So how do we reconcile Stoicism's focus on self-discipline with the reality of living in a world that's designed to make us lose control? Here's an example. Imagine you're trying to live a Stoic life. You're focused on building your inner citadel, staying virtuous, and not getting distracted by the outside world. But then you get bombarded by notifications on your phone, advertising the latest must-have gadget, and you're tempted. You feel that pull to buy something you don't need, to chase after that temporary high of acquiring more. The Stoics would tell us that this is exactly the moment when we need to rely on our inner citadel. We must remind ourselves that external things, like material possessions, won't bring us lasting happiness. True contentment comes from within. It's not about what we have, but about how we live our lives. But again, how realistic is this in our modern context? Can we really stay detached from the consumerist pressures that are all around us? Or is Stoicism asking too much of us, expecting us to rise above our very human desires? Another Stoic concept that might seem challenging to apply in today's world is indifference. The Stoics believed that things like wealth, health, and even relationships are what they called indifference. They're neither good nor bad in themselves. They only have value based on how we use them. Let that sink in for a moment. Stoicism tells us that things we often spend our entire lives chasing, money, power, recognition, don't really matter. What matters is how we approach these things. If we're virtuous, we can use them for good. If we're not, they'll only lead us astray. This can be a hard pill to swallow. We live in a society that constantly tells us that more is better. More money, more success, more attention. But the Stoics would say that this is an illusion. Wealth and status are just tools. They don't bring true happiness or peace. And here's the twist. If you rely on these things for your sense of self-worth, you're bound to be disappointed. Because the truth is, external things are fleeting. They can be taken away in an instant. But can we really live like this? Can we truly be indifferent to things like money, health, and relationships when they play such a huge role in our lives? Or does Stoicism risk being too detached from the emotional realities of human existence? Let's bring this back to something even more personal, our relationships. Stoicism teaches us that we should approach relationships with a certain level of detachment. We should love and care for others, but we should also remember that they are outside of our control. In other words, we can't let our happiness depend on other people. This is a tough one. Relationships are one of the most important parts of our lives. We build connections with family, friends, and partners. And these connections bring us joy, comfort, and sometimes pain. The Stoics, however, would remind us that while we can care deeply for others, we must not allow ourselves to be devastated by things we can't control, like the actions, opinions, or even the loss of those we love. But how realistic is this? Can we really be stoic when it comes to our relationships? Can we love deeply and still maintain a sense of detachment? Picture this. You're in a relationship and things are going well, but then something changes. Your partner pulls away, or maybe the relationship ends altogether. Most of us would react with sadness, anger, or heartbreak. But a Stoic would approach this situation differently. The Stoics would remind us that people come and go from our lives. Their actions, their feelings, even their presence. These are all things outside of our control. What we can control is how we respond. Instead of being consumed by grief or anger, the Stoic would practice acceptance. They would recognize that loss is a natural part of life, and they would focus on what they can control, how they choose to move forward. This doesn't mean that Stoics don't feel pain or sadness. It means they don't let that pain control them. But again, how realistic is this approach? Can we really stay detached from the emotional highs and lows of our relationships? Or is this just another example of Stoicism being out of touch with the emotional reality of human life? The truth is, Stoicism asks a lot of us. It challenges us to rise above our emotions, to remain calm in the face of adversity, to accept loss and hardship with grace. It's a philosophy that seeks to equip us with the mental tools. The truth is, Stoicism asks a lot of us. It challenges us to rise above our emotions, to remain calm in the face of adversity, to accept loss and hardship with grace. It's a philosophy that seeks to equip us with the mental tools to navigate a chaotic and often difficult world. But the question remains, is it realistic? Can we truly live as the Stoics did, or is their philosophy too idealistic for the complexity of modern life? Maybe the answer lies somewhere in between. Maybe Stoicism is less about achieving a perfect state of detachment and more about striving for resilience. It's about recognizing that life will throw challenges our way, but that we have the power to choose how we respond. Maybe the real value of Stoicism isn't in achieving some impossible ideal, but in making progress every day, becoming a little more grounded, a little more thoughtful, and a little less shaken by the ups and downs of life. Ultimately, Stoicism offers us a roadmap for navigating reality. Whether that reality is a job loss, a breakup, or the simple stress of everyday life. It's not about being perfect. It's about being resilient. It's about understanding that while we can't control everything that happens to us, we can control how we respond. And in that response lies our greatest power. So, is Stoicism reality? Maybe not in the sense of being easy or achievable 100% of the time, but as a guide for how to live well, how to face challenges with strength and clarity, Stoicism just might offer a blueprint for navigating the very real, very unpredictable world we live in. And that's something we can all strive for. So whether you're facing a tough moment in your life or just trying to navigate the chaos of everyday existence, remember the Stoic teachings. Focus on what you can control, let go of what you can't, and most importantly, build your inner citadel. Because in the end, it's not what happens to you that matters. It's how you choose to respond. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the world of Stoicism. Until next time, keep striving for wisdom and stay strong in the face of life's challenges. See you in the next video.